Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever. Welcome back. Today I officially start talking about the K3 Mark III that was gifted to me from Pentax Australia. This is the camera they so kindly have loaned me to talk about during for the next month or so. So rather than doing one big review all in one go, I've decided to break up my review into different videos. So today's video is going to be just basically build quality, general first impressions, kind of feeling that I got from the camera when I got it out of the box. So let's yeah, I'm not affiliated with Pentax Australia at all. This is not a paid promotion. You're seeing this video at the same time they are. I'm just very graciously happy that to be given this chance to actually have a play with this camera, because it has been one that I've been wanting to have a go for quite some time. So yeah, let's talk about. So I'm going to talk about some things. I've made a little bit of a list here. I want to talk about the build quality, the battery, the button layout, the menu system, and the OVF and things like that. So that's all we're going to talk about today. So if that doesn't interest you, just skip this video and we'll get something more interesting in the future. For example, autofocus and how well it's doing there and the advances it's made over the older systems. But let's just talk about ergonomics. Now, this camera is absolutely fantastic. This is probably my favorite Pentax camera I've ever held, and I have a 645D that I deem to be exceptionally comfortable to use, and a K1 as well. And what this one does is takes all of those things, puts it together, and knocks off 200 grams in weight off at least the K1. I'm not sure how different it is to the 645D, but yeah, it's lighter, and that feels really, really nice. Let's just put it down on the table here. I'll turn the camera around and we can have a look at it a little bit closer. 1 second. And I'll adjust the exposure so we're not in the dark. Ignore that camera in the distance. That is the K1. Say hello, K1. Okay, so I am used to, that's my own camera, my own K1. So I am used to shooting Pentax cameras. So a lot of this was familiar to me. What can we say about the buttons and the layout? Well, everything. I mean, I know this is an expensive camera, and we'll get to the price later on in the verdict, but everything feels premium, absolutely premium. You know, this dial here, even the way it feels when you're moving it, it really actually is premium. Every dial just, see, I'm recording on this Fuji camera right now, the X-T4, so I can't actually show you, but there are just, although its build quality is exceptionally good as well, there are just some dials on the Fuji that are just so stiff. Their EV compensation dial is so stiff, I can't even use it. I have to bind EV compensation to something else, like a wheel or something like that. So look, you know, whereas here with Pentax, it feels like everything is the right tension, you know, everything tactile, everything works properly. It's just fantastic. My only gripe about the button layout is this play button. It's a little bit cramped in here, and I find myself hitting the rear dial a little bit when going to press it. It might take a bit of practice to really push it, you know, a little bit differently. Otherwise, you know, I've got absolutely no complaints over this build quality whatsoever. It's just like Pentax. It's just what you expect. I was a little bit concerned about this this dial here because I'm not really a huge fan of it. But somebody pointed out that when you do actually in OVF mode here, when you are in you can bind the button. I've changed the lock button here to toggle me into live view. And that makes me happy because I prefer to do that to get in and out, just like on the K1, then mess around with this dial. Now, why do I do that? Actually, most of the times when I'm shooting, the very first thing I do is start my session off in live view mode. I get an exposure and a histogram, and it'll just give me enough information to know if I've got to, you know, if I've got to change my EV bias a little bit, and darken things for the shot, or I can brighten things up further. So that's one of the first things I do, and then I toggle out and start shooting. So that's quite important to me. I mean, I find live histogram really important and very helpful in that regard. So yeah, so I do appreciate that. You'll notice that has a little LED. I don't use this that much. It's not something I tend to really play around with that much, but there you can see it there. But I find that very good, and I would have found that really annoying to have to keep going here and here for, you know, to toggle between the two things. So it's great that that is there, and I use that quite often. So yeah, I mean, build quality. I'm not sure if there's anything else really I need to talk about there. We've got the full size OVF. That's huge. For me, when I had the KP, so I told you I was quite used to shooting Pentax, and before before I had the K3 for play, I had the let's just change the ISO. I had the KP, and you did feel a bit cramped when you shot it close up. It did feel you were constrained when you're looking down that OVF. And here we've got full-size OVF. It's just like shooting a K1. I can't really tell a difference, and that is fantastic on APS-C. I think it's worth talking about, because it's probably increased the price quite a lot of the camera. When I had the KP, quite often I would just reach for the K1 just because of that OVF experience. So I don't think they were completely mad to go down that road and put a better, bigger, brighter OVF inside APS-C. I shoot. I don't like comparing mirrorless, but I shoot with the Fuji and it's EVF, and I didn't really struggle to adapt across to that at all. It felt fine. I didn't feel like I was really looking through a TV. I was okay with it. Maybe it's. I can't feel like it's. I feel really cramped when I'm looking through it either. Maybe I don't know. Others might know, but maybe it's got a higher pixel density because it's APS-C and the EVF smaller than what you have to do for full frame EVF. I really don't know, but it was not a bad first experience of an EVF to go with the X-T4. And I think it's important to mention that because Fuji do cheaper bodies, and their EVFs are worse on the cheaper bodies. So, you know, you pay for what you get, and so, you know, the OVF, like different mirrorless cameras will have different prices depending on their eyepiece, even though they're EVF. Not all EVFs are equal, right? And I think this is kind of like the OVF equivalent. Not all OVFs are equal. You know, if you use a K70, a KP, K3II, any of these other APS-C, the OVF does feel a little bit claustrophobic, and here it doesn't. And I applaud that. I think it's fantastic what they've done. Whether it justifies such a huge price increase to cover the R&D costs and everything of doing that, I don't know. I hope those savings can be passed on in future bodies, because it is pretty expensive just to have a larger sort of full frame OVF experience. But it is good. The other thing is, you know, that build, going back to that build quality and that comfort of the camera. You know, I went in the camera store and I picked up the Fuji X-S10 the other day, and it felt quite comfortable because I really do not like the ergonomics on the X-T4 at all. Not a fan whatsoever. It's the worst part of that whole camera. And the Fuji X-X10, it felt quite comfortable, but at the same time, it felt like a toy. It felt like I was holding some kind of Fisher-Price kind of plastic thing. It didn't feel like I would get more than 18 months before something just fell off. This doesn't feel like that at all. It does feel like this will last you years and years and years. That's the kind of quality we're talking about here. So I think I've gone over everything I can really say about the buttons and the layout. Everything seems to be where they are. You've got, you know, special function buttons that we'll get into in another video. There's lots of different ways to approach your photography with this camera. That's the last thing I want to really talk about in this video is it's advanced. The menu's different from previous menus, and it's thrown me off a little bit as I'm going through the menu. Some things, changes they've made I like, some things I don't like, but because it's a little bit more advanced in terms of its autofocus capabilities, so has its so have the options. This is not something that I would recommend somebody who just wants to shoot. And I watched a review this morning about somebody who took it out for a session for some professional work and was really struggling to get good results with it. And I can understand that. I've shot weddings with Pentax and things like that, and it's not easy. It does feel like everything's a little bit harder, but if you get to know the camera a little bit more, spend more than 3 or 4 days with it, you will get a higher keeper rate out of the camera. But it's advanced. I can't help feeling, you know, that you know, releasing a bells and whistles, you know, just a kind of bread and butter basic camera would do Pentax quite well, because I think a lot of the, I'm not trying to be ageist, but I think quite a lot of their members can be quite elderly, and just all this kind of touch screen and all these different menus, I think some will just be not liking it or fuss with it, or it'll be a bit off-putting. This is not a camera for the beginner. I'm not even sure it's a camera for the intermediate. I think some pretty advanced camera knowledge is necessary to handle this camera, even more so than the K1. And that's saying something, because I think the K1 is quite complex. So definitely take time to get to learn your camera, and that's why I'm doing these reviews in little bite size, so that we can I can actually revise and say later on, maybe 2-3 weeks time, I was wrong about this or I was wrong about that, rather than just releasing a 30-minute video. But what am I at? 10 minutes now? I've talking too long, so I'll leave it there. Oh, the last thing just wanted to mention is the battery. The battery life is pretty poor on this model. Thankfully, it does take the same batteries as the K1 is 645D, so I have a ton of these lying around. So it goes both ways. It's like, it feels like they're using old tech for batteries, and then new tech's moving on, and these batteries aren't giving you quite enough juice, especially if you use live view quite a lot. I found in my previous video that you saw, I'll link it below, but that was about an hour and a half, and I went through one battery in an hour and a half. I was using live view quite a lot, as you'll see in that video, so you know, the more you use live view, the more it will drain, but it's definitely noticeably worse than battery life in a K1, for example. So gets a bit warm at times and things like that. Nothing that I've worried about, but yeah. So it's good if you're an existing Pentax user. You've probably got hundreds of these batteries. That's great. You know, when I bought into the Fuji, I had to buy another 2 or 3 batteries. That's another $200, $300 down the drain. They're not cheap. They're like $100 a battery if you buy a brand, you know, the home brand. So yeah, it's there are hidden costs there. So it's pros and cons. It's like, you just basically make sure you go out with enough batteries. Sometimes I go out with the K1 with just one more battery, and it's enough for a whole day shoot. This, I probably stuff my pockets with 3 or 4, to be honest. It's that it could be that worrying. So, but I might eat my words. We'll see how we go in the future with that. But yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to say at this point in time. Let me know if there's, in the comments, if there's a question you'd like to ask me about this camera, I'd like to know about. Otherwise, I think the next one we'll get to the meat and bones of it, which will be things like autofocus, face detection, subject recognition, and really get to the bottom of that, because I think there's a lot of confusion around those modes in itself and how they stack up, and are they very usable in terms of, you know, portrait work. So we'll have a look at that. And yeah, okay, that's all for now. Signing off. Ta-ta.